Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for tuning in. So, I thought I would do something highly narcissistic and self-centered in this video. So, I want to talk about some of my own transits that are going on for me right now, I guess, to kind of give a slight overview of how certain transits can show up sort of practically or psychologically in a person's life. I do have a bit of a cold, so if you can hear it in my voice, sorry about that. It's not COVID. I've tested so many times, and it doesn't seem to be COVID. But I have a bit of a cold. Uh, so sometimes when I think about transits, sometimes it's more obvious how they show up. Sometimes it takes a bit more digging. Sometimes some transits go by with almost no discernible impact, or at least that has been my experience. There's been a lot of transits that have just kind of been there in the background, I guess, that I haven't really noticed much. But I've made a list of a few of my transits that I've got going on at the moment, and that I've had going on for like the last little while or whatever. And I wanted to talk about them because these are the transits that I've really noticed and that I've felt psychologically, and that I've sort of that have played out in my day-to-day life and in my psychology. And I just wanted to kind of give a little overview of some of these transits and how the planetary movement, so to speak, can be reflected in your day-to-day life. So I just found it interesting because, like I said, there have been a lot of transits that have kind of gone by with relatively little impact, but these ones I've kind of felt, and so I just wanted to talk about them. If it's interesting for anybody, let's hope it is. So what you're looking at is my chart. I'm using the Placidus system right now. I don't have anything against other house systems. Sometimes I like to use whole sign, especially when I'm thinking about transits. I actually sometimes use whole sign for that. And I have nothing against equal house system either. I've used all those three. But this is my chart, and these, hopefully you can see the cursor where I'm pointing. So these green planetary glyphs are the transiting planets, and these ones in the middle here inside are my birth planets. So I wanted to talk about 5 different transits. So the first one that I want to talk about is that Uranus is currently conjunct my Venus, and this has proven to be quite significant in my life. So Uranus is currently at 17 degrees of Taurus. My Venus is at 15 degrees of Taurus. So it's just been kind of going over my Venus. And it's something that I was actually really looking forward to. I remember, like, for the past, I would say 2 years, like, I knew that I had that transit coming up, and when it was getting closer and closer, I was kind of becoming like a little bit excited, like more excited than I have been for other transits that I knew were coming up. So with this one, I was looking forward to it because, Uranus conjunct Venus can, change people's social lives, which is something that I've struggled with a lot, just kind of socializing and finding the right people and mingling with people. And it can also kind of electrify the person, like electrify their social life, bringing new exciting opportunities for socializing and things like that. And it can also bring changes to a person's financial life. And both of those things have been impacted for me. And also, I suppose, in a way, something that was significant and that was more related to like appearance was also that I dyed my hair right when Uranus was on top of my Venus. So it was on the same degree of my Venus when I got my hair dyed. And so that's something that I've wanted to do for a while, and it just never really happened. And I just found it funny that when I finally was able to do it, that Uranus was right on my Venus. because Venus has to do with our self-worth and our sort of our image, and our can have to do with our appearance and just how we feel about ourselves and how we look and all that. So Uranus can bring a lot of changes, can bring something new, and I think just the way one of the ways that this transit just happened to express itself in my life was that I dyed my hair, and getting to do something that I wanted to do for a while, and also I made a new friend. And while that hasn't been perfect, there's been kind of ups and downs in the friendship. It's definitely There's definitely a Uranian quality to the friendship because Uranus is quite unpredictable and can be erratic, and so ups and downs definitely sounds like Uranus. It's not like a stable sort of hasn't been a stable friendship, so to speak. I'm not going to go into detail, but it definitely feels like it has been a Uranian friendship. And so I found that interesting because I made a new friend, when Uranus was transiting over my Venus. I think it was like maybe a couple of degrees before maybe my Venus is at 15 degrees, so maybe Uranus was around maybe 12, 13 degrees when I made the new friend. I'm not really sure, but definitely I dyed my hair when Uranus was right on my Venus at the same degree. And also, my financial matters have been a little erratic and up and down as well. So I just find that interesting that, this is a transit that I was looking forward to. And if you're curious about some of the ways that Uranus conjunct Venus can show up, or Uranus transiting Venus in any way, it can be that you change your appearance. Obviously, with Placidus system, Venus is also in my first house, which has to do with like our physical appearance, so that makes sense. And also, finances have been kind of up and down, and made a new friend that has the friendship has like an erratic sort of unpredictable, not very stable quality to it. So all those three ways that I could think of, like three areas of life that I would consider like Uranus Venus, that Uranus Venus transits would indicate a change in. All of them have kind of happened in my life during this transit. So I thought that was interesting, and it's just something to remember, that if you think you're if you're having this transit coming up or something like that, that's one way. Like these are three ways that it can show up. So I changed my hair and made a new erratic friendship, and finances have been kind of changeable. And what I also find interesting about, especially with like the hair dyeing situation, which isn't really a big deal, but it just kind of shows up in this way, is that, Uranus, while it's conjunct my Venus, it's also trine my Uranus. So it's a little bit of a loose trine by now, because my Uranus is at 13 degrees of Capricorn and Uranus currently is at 17 degrees of Taurus. But, I've been going through this Uranus trine, and what that indicates is that, the person has reached a stage in their sort of spiritual, psychological soul growth and development, that they kind of are ready to let go of certain things from like childhood and the past and the chains from the past, and to kind of express a newness, to kind of take the reins and to decide like to do things their own way or to do things a different way. It's kind of an aspect of releasing, a transit of releasing. So I think when people have their Uranus transits, it can be a very revolutionary time. For me, it hasn't been super significant. It hasn't been super noticeable, but certain things definitely have shown that I have currently a need for sort of newness, and to like allowing myself to express myself in certain ways that I didn't before. I think that's significant. That's kind of the way that this has shown up for me. I also want to talk about Jupiter. My sun sign is Aries, right? So my ascendant is in Aries. Well, lately I've been looking a little bit into sidereal astrology, and with that system, my sun and ascendant are both in Pisces, which is something to think about as well, because sometimes I don't relate all that much to some of the Aries qualities, or maybe the Aries description is just very simplified. It's difficult for me to explain to people that I'm an Aries, basically, because they see me as more of a Pisces type of character, and in some ways I am. But yeah, if we're talking about this chart that I, know myself to have, that I use, so Sun and Sun are in Aries, and Jupiter has just gone into Aries, like this year. So Jupiter in Aries is conjunct my ascendant and my Sun, and I think that's very significant. And I was actually talking to my mother about this, because my mother and I sometimes discuss astrology and the transits a little bit. She's a little bit into astrology as well. So I was telling her about how something in me has shifted into a more positive sort of being. Like I feel myself being more positive lately. I feel myself like something has opened up in my mind, in my consciousness. I'm kind of seeing things in a different way. And I think it's not just this aspect, like Jupiter conjunct Sun or Jupiter conjunct Ascendant. I think it's a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of all the transits. Like also Uranus transiting my Uranus and things like that. Like I think the combination of everything has made me kind of more optimistic lately, positive. I still have my down days, but overall I noticed right when Jupiter kind of went conjunct my Sun and my Ascendant, like when it went into Aries, I noticed that something is shifted, like right away. It's very kind of very sudden almost, that I started feeling better in myself. Like I started kind of being more confident. I started being more Jupiterian. Like Jupiter often brings optimism and good luck and kind of happy thoughts, even if it's not the only expression of Jupiter, of course, but it's one of the expressions of it. So I found that interesting, and it's not even exactly conjunct my ascendant or the Sun. So Jupiter is at 6 degrees of Aries, my ascendant is at 7 degrees of Aries, and Sun is at 10 degrees of Aries. So I'm looking forward to seeing if anything gets even better when Jupiter gets even closer to my Sun and when it enters my first house. Right now it's kind of like right at the end of the 12th house here. So there's that. So definitely for me personally, I wasn't expecting it to kind of show up so obviously, if that makes sense. Like that Jupiter transits are often associated with optimism and things changing for the positive, a burst of positive energy. And for me that was definitely the case, even though right now I'm kind of a little bit sick. I have a cold and I have a cough, but I'm a little bit weak. But just that can be maybe something else. Like I do have I think Neptune is square my Mars right now. Yeah, so Neptune is square my Mars right now, which can give a little bit of a weakness in energy. So there's that. But in general, just my life has been kind of going a little bit smoother, I've been filled with a bit more positive energy lately, and I just found it interesting that this Jupiter transit, Jupiter going into Aries and conjuncting my ascendant, conjuncting my Sun, that it showed up in a very obvious way, that I just sort of became more positive. And of course it may not show up like that for other people. Jupiter conjuncting the Sun, for example, can also bring an element of excess, just going overboard with your actions, maybe with your, like maybe there's a bit of selfishness in your activities or in your actions. So there's different ways that can show up, but for me personally, it definitely seemed to express itself in a very classic way, that I became more optimistic, more positive. So I got like filled with positive energy. And also, it's interesting because Jupiter going into Aries means that it's also trine my Jupiter. If you can see, I'm moving the mouse. So Jupiter in my chart is at 3 degrees of Leo. And right now Jupiter is at 6 degrees of Aries. So it's moved away from a tight trine, but it's still in a trine. So a fire trine. So that is, again, Jupiter in a fire trine, Jupiter in Aries trining my Jupiter in Leo. Again, it's giving a boost. It's giving a positivity. It's giving an optimism. Like things are kind of opening up in my consciousness in terms of like I'm seeing things a different way, and just I feel better in myself, and just like all that Jupiter good stuff has shown up. I want to talk a little bit about another thing here that comes to the when it comes to the houses. So, like I say, I've used different house systems, and I don't kind of 100% cling to any house system. But one thing I find interesting in this Placidus house system is that, I would have Pluto transiting my 11th house. Pluto here in Capricorn transiting my 11th house in the Placidus system. So in whole sign, for example, it would be my 10th house, which makes a little bit of sense, but I think Pluto in the 11th house kind of makes sense more, just a little bit more, because the 11th house is the house of like friendships, social groups, how you fit into society, the collective, just groups in general, and like your ideas when it comes to the collective and like collective consciousness, and like all that has been kind of is in the process still of transforming in me. So even when it comes to my social life and friendships, there's been a lot of friendships and just people that I used to talk to that have sort of broken apart when Pluto has been transiting my 11th house in this Placidus system. So there's been a lot of kind of changes when it comes to the way that I interact with people. I left an online community I was very active in. There's been people that have stopped talking to me. There's been people that like I've stopped talking to. I recently deleted my Facebook account, which I think is still in the process because it takes 30 days to completely disappear, but it's in the process of being deleted. So all these things point to Pluto transiting my 11th house, because Pluto wants to get rid of things that are no longer necessary in your development, I guess, or just it likes to bring about changes sometimes in a very sudden, destructive way, but also just in a way that like it's purging, it's getting rid of something that has been wanting to get out from your life, but you haven't been able to let it go. And then it just kind of inspires you one day to kind of just make these changes, I guess. Like that's the way that it has kind of expressed itself in my life. So Pluto had transiting the 11th house. One way that Pluto transiting the 11th house can show up is that changes in the social life become very like obvious. You lose contact with certain people. Maybe you lose some friendships. Maybe a friend moves far away or something like that, which hasn't happened to me, but I'm just trying to give different examples. So that's probably one of the house placements, one of the transiting planets' house placements that I find the most significant for me personally right now, just because I see play out in such a strong way, because my social life and my ideas about the collective even have changed, like, and as a result, it has kind of given me more time to do certain things, because I'm not spending all my time kind of on an online community that I wasn't happy in anymore, and things like that. Like it's just making space for something new, getting rid of something, destroying something almost, so that you can have something new. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that transits can show up, and I just wanted to talk about these ones in particular just because I found them to play out particularly strongly, stronger than my transits usually seem to play out. So it's kind of just an exercise in being aware and being conscious of how these transits show up. For me personally, it's just like an exercise in trying to be more aware of how transits are showing up, and maybe you got something out of it as well. Maybe you were inspired by something. Maybe you have some of these transits going on, or you will have some of these transits going on soon. And so it's just, I wanted to give a little idea of how some of the ways that these can show up. And I might actually do a video where I read my own chart. It was suggested to me a while ago, but I don't know if that would be a bit too I would feel a little weird about it, but I would try it. I might be able to try it. Certainly it's an option. So thank you so much for listening. If you're interested in more content from me, you know what to do. Subscribe and leave a thumbs up if you like this, and leave a comment if any of these ideas struck you particularly strongly. So thank you so much.